It's the Criterion. It's the Criterion. Criterion. Project.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Criterion Project. We are here to talk about what is playing on the Criterion channel. Every couple of weeks we get together and we are surviving quarantine by watching lots of fun stuff on the Criterion channel. I'm film critic Rachel Wagner, and Conrado is here.
Yes, he is.
Yes. So how are you doing?
Well, I'm still alive. I'm kicking. Yeah. We're all surviving scary times, but also unique times. So
That's right. Yes, same. I've had a little bit of something, but I've sought medical care and everything's fine. So it's going to be great. And I'm excited to talk about our movie today. And but what have you been able to watch on the Criterion channel?
So I've been watching a lot since we're all stuck at home, social distancing and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
On the Criterion channel, I have noticed that they have a number of Jane Campion movies that are about to go off the channel on March 31st. So I've been trying to catch up with some of those. And last night I watched The Piano, which I don't know if you've seen it, Rachel, but it's a very interesting movie. It's the only female-directed movie to have won at Cannes the Palme d'Or, and it also won 3 Oscars, got nominated for Best Picture and all that stuff.
I saw it on television, so it was edited.
Oh yeah.
But so I saw a version of it, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's a very, it's kind of a crazy, great movie. I don't know. I was very surprised by it. I had also seen it just once, long time ago. I barely remembered it, but I was surprised. It's the story of this sort of mute woman played by Holly Hunter who gets married off to a sort of landowner in New Zealand, and then she goes and she takes her piano with her, but then the guy is a terrible husband. He doesn't want to bring the piano up to the house. So the piano sits by the beach, and then she has an affair and blah blah blah. It's kind of a dark romance movie, I would say, period piece, but it felt to me very, very different from the usual period piece. It didn't feel like at all stuffy or stuck or slow. It just moved in a really interesting way to me. And Jane Campion's very stylish in the cinematography and all that kind of stuff. It's a complicated movie. It's not a straightforward romance, but for everyone who has been curious about The Piano, I would say it's worth a watch. I was really, really engrossed by it.
Mm. Yeah. I even though I saw the edited version, I remember finding it, moving and agree on the acting in particular.
Yeah, the acting. Anna Paquin, when she was a little girl, she plays Holly Hunter's daughter. She won an Oscar for her performance, and she's really great. It's a really great child performance. Yeah, definitely.
Cool.
So how about you?
Did you have any others that you were
yeah, you can go ahead.
Well, I actually didn't watch it on the Criterion channel, but it is a Criterion release. Last night I was watching TCM, and they played It's a Mad World, which is a movie I love, and I think I own it, so I don't know why I watch it on TCM, but nevertheless, and it's just so funny. It has this amazing cast of everybody who was funny at that time, all looking for this buried treasure and the shenanigans that unfold. And it's one of the only pure outright comedies that I can think of that was nominated for lots of Oscars. I don't know what it won, but it was I can't remember how many. It was nominated for lots. And I just think it's really funny, especially Ethel Merman. I think she's hilarious in it. And so that was fun to watch that, and hopefully they'll put it on the Criterion channel soon. And then I also rewatched The Seventh Seal with the with the death of Max von Sydow. I thought it was
Yeah.
appropriate to watch it. It's a very weird movie, but I think effective in its weirdness. With with a knight that fought the Crusades. He comes onto this beach and he ends up playing chess with death
Right.
as a character, and it's obviously very artsy, very. It's not going to be for everyone, but it has a lot to say,
Yeah.
and I think it's interesting. So
I haven't seen it, but this is the famous, very referenced and very much parodied scene in which they're playing chess by the beach, right? The guy dressed in all black, playing
yes,
chess with death in black and white. So I haven't seen the movie yet, but I heard that it's, despite its reputation, that it's also kind of funny, and it
yeah,
has a
it
lot of,
is. Yeah, it
yeah.
definitely
So
has. Well, also it's heavily parodied in Monty Python. So
right.
so I think some stuff that maybe wouldn't even be that, at least because I love Monty Python and the Holy Grail. That's my favorite comedy of all time. And so a lot of stuff that I don't even know if it, like when it was made, if it was that funny, but because it makes me think of Monty Python, it
Right.
makes me laugh. But
Oh,
it does have
interesting.
some funny parts, and I think it has some interesting things to say
Mm-hmm.
about life, and especially if you think about that they're fighting kind of the plague basically,
Oh, interesting.
and
Seems relevant.
it's a lot about kind of faith, and the one character, he wants to be an atheist, but he's seen all of the good in humanity, and he has a hard time kind of
Hmm.
denying completely denying a greater power. But then he
Mm-hmm.
sees the bad, and I don't know. So it's an interesting. It's like this
Yeah.
person kind of wrestling with
Mm-hmm.
God, with the evils of the world, with the good in the world, and so it's like that's kind of the sort of the main message of why does evil happen? Why do bad things happen? The the poor choices of people, but then also things that seem to be out of our control. Um, and so yeah, to me at least is a movie about faith,
Mm-hmm.
and whether when we choose to believe or not believe, um, and I actually thought that it ended on a pretty hopeful note, and cinematography is great. It's very creative. I watched it the first time for my blind spot series that I do where every month, where I review a movie I haven't seen before. So I'll put a link to that review if people are interested. I watched it in 2018
Oh,
for
fantastic.
blind spot. So,
That sounds great.
and it's
Yeah.
Ingmar Bergman, who's
Yeah, an
awesome.
interrogation of faith and God sounds like a Bergman movie.
Yeah.
Kind of
uh
like, for a
yeah.
while, I think like all his movies were about that. So
Oh yeah.
seems
I
on
haven't
brand.
I haven't seen that many of his. I that's something I
Mm,
need to do better on. I haven't seen that many of
yeah,
his movies. So,
yeah. I haven't seen that many either, but I've seen some really, couple of really great ones.
mhm,
Fanny and Alexander is really great. Cries and Whispers.
mhm.
Yeah.
So, anyways, that was interesting to revisit. Uh, but so today we're going to talk about Hard Day's Night, and I kind of just picked this at random because it seemed like it would be fun, and I was looking for something kind of fun and
Hmm.
lighter. Uh, and
Yeah.
um, and it was interesting I haven't seen this for many, many years. It was interesting to revisit it. What about you? Had you seen this before?
I had seen this once before. Um, Probably about 5 or 6 years ago, I would say at this point. Um, that was the first time I saw it. But of course, I feel like everyone in the world who watches movies or TV or anything is familiar with kind of like the images from A Hard Day's Night of the
Yeah.
Beatles running away from all the fans and that sort of thing. I mean, that talk about being parodied, that's been in like I don't know how many movies and TV shows have done a
Yeah,
parody of that.
for sure. And even so many different movie. That's why we're talking about the remake. I'm struggling because so many other bands over the years have basically done this movie, whether you're
Yeah,
talking this, Spice World or, something like that. Or
totally.
it's like, it's already been remade so
Yeah,
many times. How do you
yeah. I mean, right off the bat, after the movie came out, you had like other bands of that
Yeah.
time making their own version. Like I know there's one by the Dave Clark Five called "Having a Wild Weekend," which is basically just a Hard Day's Night kind of thing. And then, of course, you have the Monkees, which
Mhm.
the TV show basically created just to have an American version of the Beatles on TV.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. So yeah, it was watching it again. I loved the music, of course, and so I liked the movie
Mhm.
because I love the music. And the scenes where they're being chased and stuff like that are pretty charming. Some of the other stuff was a little weird for me, like the whole grandpa thing. I don't know. I didn't love that part. I don't know. I felt like some of the attempts at comic relief didn't really work for me. And there's definitely I was really surprised by like the orgy joke and like some of the more not, I don't know, I just don't remember that. I was like, oh, that's surprising because I would expect that later on in their career, but I'd forgotten that it was in this early one.
Yeah, well, I think we see this happen sometimes with older stuff. Is that as they get more accepted as part of the culture and part of the community, we kind of forget that some of these things that seem quaint now were very transgressive back in the day, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think the Beatles, when they first came out, they were kind of like a little bit controversial in their own way, right? And
Yeah,
people and adults saying like, "Oh, these kids with their crazy haircuts," which don't seem really crazy at all
that's
nowadays. But
true.
back then, it was like a huge um, deal, right? I think in the movie they even make jokes about confusing everyone who has a haircut like that for the Beatles because it was so unusual to
Yeah.
wear the hair like that, and rock and roll and the screaming fans and all that stuff. It was a crazy. It was
Mm-hmm.
that's
Yeah.
why we remember it's such a singular thing. But why don't we start at the very beginning, Rachel? Why don't you do you want to tell us about like your history with the Beatles and as a band, or is it their
Yeah.
music, their persona?
Yeah. Well, so my my parents aren't really, they're pretty conservative, they're pretty traditional, and they don't like a whole lot. They like classical music,
Mm-hmm.
especially my dad has a few bands he likes. He likes John Fogerty and Crosby, Stills and Nash and Young and a few different bands like that. But I wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
say either of them are big Beatles people. They don't hate the Beatles, but
Mm-hmm.
and my parents just prefer more classical music,
Right.
and so uh, most of the stuff that we discovered was by our own sort of uncovering, and
Mm.
whether it was my brother finding out about different music and introducing it to me, or just my friends or whatever. I remember
Mm-hmm.
I found the Beach Boys first, and that was
Oh,
kind of my
good.
first love, was the Beach Boys. And I
Nice.
I do love the Beach Boys.
Oh, me
And
too.
if you, I think oh shoot, now my brain, what's the movie about Brian
Oh,
Wilson
the
that's so
Love and
good?
Mercy.
I thought, yeah, Love and Mercy, even though I couldn't remember the name, I thought that was a really creative take on a biopic. I thought
Mm-hmm.
it's not
Mm-hmm.
perfect, but I really liked the swing that they took on it.
Yeah, I agree
And
with that.
yeah, and anyway, so that was kind of my first, and then I went through a phase where I kind of discovered the Beatles. It was when I was in high school. There was this anthology that went along with a television documentary kind of thing, and they
Oh,
discovered
yeah.
a lost
Mm-hmm.
song or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. And I think that was right around when I kind of got really interested in the
Mm-hmm.
Beatles. And I think what's amazing about the Beatles is just how many how much material they released in a pretty short time, and just how many hit songs that they wrote is just amazing. And
Yeah.
I definitely prefer the earlier period versus the later period. I would say about I don't know, once they get to sort of Sergeant Pepper's, I think my interest is less
A little
when it's
too
getting,
psychedelic.
yeah, and that's just not, that's not me. But I don't hate it, but it's not my favorite. But especially some of the early albums, I really, really enjoy, and I love Hard Day's Night. I was thinking I was going to ask you what your favorite song was in the movie,
In the
and
movie.
it's tough to decide because I
Yeah.
really enjoy almost all the songs.
Yeah. Um, okay, so what do you want me to answer first?
Okay. Well, why
Lots
don't
to
you
talk
tell
about.
your history with the Beatles?
Oh, great. Yeah. So actually, so my mom introduced them to me. I remember she bought a CD and she used to drive my sister and I from tennis practice, playing the Beatles, and that's how I got to know them as a little kid. It was probably about 9 or so. Then I really got into them when I was starting to get more interested in the history of rock and roll and pop music and that sort of thing. And then in high school, I had a period in which I decided, I think it must have been overexposure or something. And I decided I am done with the Beatles. The Beatles, forget about them. They are totally overrated. I don't care about them. Don't want to listen to them anymore or ever. And had this sort of contrarian opinion until relatively, I mean, it's not that I kind of now, as the years have gone by, I understand that that's kind of like a stupid position to have in so many ways, but I've also had never felt the drive to listen to the Beatles really, or like to reappraise them again. Actually, until you decided to go with this movie for this episode,
Woohoo!
and that made me curious. So I have been listening to some Beatles music again for the first time, really listening, and I have only listened to their stuff up to A Hard Day's Night, so I can't really speak for what happens later. But it has been really interesting for me to kind of listen with fresh ears and see what they were all about. And these are some really great songs. I mean,
Yeah.
they were. I mean, what are you gonna say? Like, how ridiculous is it to say do you like or don't like the Beatles? Like, I don't think anyone in the world would even care about one single person's opinion about it. It's just
Yeah.
undeniable that they're like one of the most important bands in the history of music. Like, whether you like them or not doesn't
Yeah.
really matter. It's just like, you know.
I remember, I can't even remember what sitcom it was on, but there was one I was watching once, and the one girl ends up, she goes on this date with this guy who doesn't like the Beatles, and she's just like, what? She's like, 18 top number one hits. You know, like a single one, like not one song. Like, she's like, I can't be in this relationship.
Yeah, that's funny. You just reminded me, like growing up in South America, there was this sort of Argentinian comic strip that was syndicated all over the continent, basically.
Uh-huh.
It was called Mafalda. And there was this little Argentinian girl, and one of the characters was her friend, Manolo. And he, like, part of his whole shtick was that he didn't get the Beatles. Like, all the kids loved the Beatles, and this was the one guy who didn't get it. It was
Yeah.
like, the music sounds like trash or whatever. He was obviously like the one who was only focused on, like, he helped his dad at their store, and he was all focused on the money and and
Yeah.
whatever. So all the other kids were like playing around, and he was like, I need to make money and I don't get the Beatles or whatever. It was funny.
Yeah, that's funny. I mean, it does seem, because they had such variety depending on the different phases. It seems like almost anybody would be able to find one phase or one album that you like. And I usually particularly like the Paul McCartney songs over the other songs, because I think he has more of a poet in him than the others.
Wow,
And
interesting. Because most people would say that the most artistic poetry one would be John.
no,
You're
because
coming in with the hot takes.
yeah, I guess so. But like Eleanor Rigby and some of those things, I just think is really, Yesterday. Love that.
Right.
One of my favorites.
Um,
Did you watch?
yeah.
Did you see the movie last year, Yesterday?
I didn't actually.
Yeah.
Partially because of the whole Beatles thing. Like back then, I was still trying to avoid them, I guess.
Yeah, I like it in concept better than execution. It's not awful. It was okay, but I found the lead guy to be kind of unlikable, and
Mm.
so that was a problem for me. And I didn't really like the way he treated the Lily James character.
Oh,
But the concept of a world without the Beatles is a fun concept, and
sure.
there were fun moments in it. So
Hmm.
if it was something to stream or whatever, I would say, yeah, go ahead and stream it. It's fun enough.
Hmm.
But I think I did go rotten on it, but it's one of those ones in the middle for me.
Interesting.
But yeah, I also, have you seen, probably not because you didn't like the Beatles, but Across the Universe? Have you seen that?
I did see that because that was right around the time actually when I turned on the Beatles. That
Mm,
was so whenever that was, probably 2006 or '07 or
mm.
something. That was around the time when I was really into them. And then I was kind of, I think that, and then at around the same time, I think they did the Cirque du Soleil show. I don't know if you remember
Oh
that.
yeah,
I don't
Help,
remember what
I
that
think.
was called. What
I
was it?
think it was, or Love. Was it called Love?
I think you're right, Love. I
Love,
think,
yeah, Love.
and my parents had the CD, so they played that a lot. And then there was Across the Universe and all this stuff. And I think that's the moment when it was enough. That I
Yeah,
was like, I'm listening to this too much. I am done with this like overexposure, like I said.
right. Yeah, and uh,
But
I don't really like Across the Universe. I respect it,
hmm.
and I think that it's very ambitious and visually beautiful, but it's just exhausting to me. It's too much.
Yeah, yeah. From what I remember, it seemed like it was kind of like a ambitious mess.
Yeah, yeah, I'd say that. I
Yeah.
think it would be better to watch in like a series of music videos than
Mm,
the whole thing. It's too much.
mm.
But it's been
So,
years since I saw it, so who knows
so
what
what do
I
you
think
think of
now.
a Hard Day's Night then? It's a bit of a shaggy movie. It's kind of messy. Seems definitely influenced by kind of like a French New Wave sort of thing.
Yeah.
Handheld cameras and all that stuff.
Well,
Um,
like I said, it was weirder than I remembered.
mhm, mhm,
And I don't know, like I guess I was maybe a tiny bit disappointed, but I didn't dislike it. And anytime that the music would start, kind of perk up and be like, "Oh yeah, I like this.
right.
This is such a good song."
Yeah.
And I feel like it's stupid to downgrade a movie like this because of the plot. No one watches this for the plot. They're watching it for the music and the
Mhm,
Beatles. And so if you're judging a movie by what it's trying to do,
mhm.
then it succeeds. It has
Yeah.
really great music, and it's bubbly and it's fun. I just, the comic relief was not my
Mhm,
favorite. Like I said, the whole thing with the grandpa, I was just like, what is going on? This is
mhm.
weird. And
Well, I kind of,
weird.
I mean, the grandpa, I think some of it works and some of it doesn't for me. I think
Mhm.
I found out later that the guy who plays the grandpa, and let me find out his name. His name is Wilfred something, I think.
Mhm.
Wilfred Bramble, and he was an actor known for the sitcom Stepton and Son, which played
Uh-huh.
on BBC, and it's the sitcom that inspired Stanford and Son
Oh,
from the
interesting.
'70s. So, and basically, he was known for playing a character who was really um, messy and dirty. So the joke that they go in the movie when everyone says that he's so clean looking is apparently a
Oh,
reference to that. So
that's interesting.
so I think what we have in the movie as a whole is a lot of very specific things to 1964 and the
Mm.
time in which it was made, which makes me think we have something very interesting here in terms of, I think, looking at it from our point of view of how huge the Beatles are and how iconic the movie is. It feels like the movie is a little underwhelming. But when you look at it from the point of view of 1964, and just the idea that the movie was really made just to promote and take advantage of the fact that the Beatles were so popular back then,
Yeah.
right? And they were kind of like, they were just coming up, and it was at the height of Beatlemania as it was just starting. So it was basically a cash grab by the studio and by the record label.
Mhm.
And to consider that that ended up being a movie that is so iconic and influential as this movie is, is kind of really impressive in its own way, even if everything that seemed fresh and exciting about it at the time, it's totally not fresh anymore because it has been parodied so many times and it has become part of the way we see youth culture and the world and
Yeah.
everything, you know?
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. That is, I hadn't thought of it that way. And I did think that towards the end, when you have George pretending to be a model, like, everyone thinks he's the model.
Mm-hmm.
And that was funny to me. And some of the stuff with Ringo towards the end
Well,
was
okay.
funny.
That's what I was waiting for you to say. Ringo. Give me more Ringo. I want Ringo all day long. Ringo is the star of this movie, baby. I just want Ringo. I can't get enough Ringo. This is the thing that surprised me the most, is how much I liked Ringo, and so much more than everyone else. He's so funny. Just seeing him play the drums.
Funny.
I mean, the drums and the faces that he makes when he's playing, he's just so happy to be there, and he's kind of like this doofy guy.
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus. I think, I can't believe he is considered to be the fourth wheel of the group, because he was so funny. He's the star as far as I'm concerned. The other one, especially John, comes off as kind of a jerk.
Yeah, I'd agree. He definitely, as far as this movie, I mean, it's kind of an easy joke to play about the drummer, because like if you ever seen him, what is wrong with me today? My
Spinal Tap, is that what
Spinal Tap? Yeah, I love it in I love in Spinal Tap that the drummer just keeps getting struck by the lightning.
Oh yeah, and they just keep getting new drummers.
They just keep getting a new one.
Yeah. Well, I think that kind of thing about the drummer, I think maybe it comes from the Beatles and Ringo, because they famously, right before they got famous, they replaced their original drummer, and then Ringo came along, and I think that's why he feels kind of like the fourth guy, because he wasn't there from the beginning. Yeah. And
and he
obviously he didn't write that many songs.
Yeah, he would, towards the end, he would have maybe one song or two songs in an album. Yeah. But he wasn't.
And his songs were never the hit songs and whatever. So it makes sense. But I feel like he was the secret ingredient, at least in this movie.
Yeah. There was one really touching part in Yesterday where because the Beatles haven't existed, the character finds an alternate version of John Lennon. And he's like this little fisherman / poet in this town, and he's just living this nice life, and it was I liked that. It was a good part of the film. But do you have a favorite song of any? I haven't written down the songs if you want to go over.
So from the movie, because I think
most
of the songs from the movie were written for the movie, but I think there's a couple that were older than that. So are we counting everything that's in the movie?
Well, that's what I just had written down, what was on Wikipedia.
Perfect. So let me see. So we have, A Hard Day's Night's a good song, obviously. I really like I Should Have Known Better.
Yeah.
And I really like Can't Buy Me Love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that one's Can't Buy Me Love is my favorite. I think She Loves You is probably my favorite.
She Loves You is great.
That one's really
She Loves You is the one that, like, going back to my early days with the Beatles in the car with my mom, my sister, maybe my cousins were there too. She Loves You is the one that the whole car would sing along to, and that all the little kids were obsessed with, and they wanted just to listen to it over and over again. Yeah,
Can't Buy Me Love I really love. I really enjoy All My Loving. And it's just I don't know, there's so many great songs. And so is this, do you happen to know if this is a Criterion or if it's just
it is a Criterion release, and it has a number of special features on the Criterion channel available. So very interesting. A lot of interviews, including one with Brad Bird.
Oh, I'll have to check that out.
Yeah.
So do you think it deserves to be a Criterion collection? Do you think it fits with what makes it a Criterion in your eyes?
Wow, wonderful. This is great segue, Rachel. Very smooth into our first question. Yes, I think absolutely. I think I I am kind of a little bit on the same boat as you. I don't know if our issues are the same, but I do find the movie to be a little um a little bit shapeless, a little bit not as much fun to watch as I would want it to be, given that it's supposed to be this raucous comedy. The music's great, but then like maybe it's like a little too long at parts, or a little not funny enough for me at certain moments. But like I was saying about the Beatles themselves, that is kind of beside the point with a movie like this. I think just historically and aesthetically, I don't know. This movie is basically inventing music videos, and
Yeah.
cutting for music videos, and it's inventing the whole idea of the boy band, and this whole thing about the fans running around and the chaos and it is like one of the fundamental documents of the 1960s, I would say. So how could it not be in something like this, right? It makes total sense.
Yeah, I mean, on one hand, it seems kind of light and
Mm,
fluffy for Criterion, but
mhm,
I agree with you that it is so influential that it definitely belongs in in the collection, I think.
mhm,
And it is, and it's well done for what it's trying to be. It's because I
mhm,
I think the things that I didn't like as much are just kind of extra parts. Like it's just sort of filler. Like the core parts of the music and the personality of the four, and
mhm.
that it does really well. So
Yeah.
even though I felt a tiny bit disappointed, I still can totally see why it was, why I still like it.
Mhm.
It's just, I don't know, it was just different than I was expecting.
Yeah.
Uh,
Also, thinking of Criterion as a company, it makes
yeah,
total sense that they would want to get some of those Beatles dollars. You
right,
know what I
yeah,
mean? Like Beatles fans will shell out for anything Beatles. That's
right,
why they keep re-releasing their music every couple of years in new
true,
formats.
that's true. So, and as far as pretentious scale, I mean, I'd give this like a 0. I don't think this movie is pretentious at all.
I am inclined to agree with you, except I wonder a little bit how we define pretentiousness is. I was wondering if trying to be like transgressive and modern in your own way, is that its
Uh-huh.
own version of being a little bit pretentious? So I would still be pretty low, but maybe like a 1 or a 2,
Yeah, interesting.
just because I think there's that thing of wanting to be different from the norm in this movie, which is weird because now it feels so much like what we understand pop music to be, but maybe that's like it was rebellious in its time.
Yeah. Well, as far as our remake section, I struggled with this because I feel like, again, it has been remade so many
Hmm.
times, basically with different bands. But,
Hmm.
and I guess you could count that as remaking this movie. But I was thinking, they did come out with the Ron Howard directed documentary a couple of years ago. But I think it would be cool if they kind of, the best part about Bohemian Rhapsody was sort of recreating the Band-Aid concert,
Mm.
the ending concert was, I thought, pretty effective. The movie I don't like, but that concert scene was really good. And if you could do kind of that same thing, but basically do either a recreation, or you could kind of do what they did with Apollo 11 documentary, and
Ah.
splice together all the footage that you
Mm.
have from both the Hard Day's Night movie and other concert footage, and create a concert experience for maybe even for IMAX, and you could go and feel like you were at a Beatles concert. That would be pretty cool.
Mm. Yeah, that's a cool idea.
I would go to that.
That makes me think of another way to remake this other than what I had brought to the table, which is I don't know if this would work, but like maybe I kind of like a Ed Wood or Disaster Artist or Dolomite type
Mm,
of thing where you don't focus. I'm thinking of Ed Wood, how I don't know if you've seen the Tim
mm,
Burton movie where he meets Orson Welles at the end. So have a band that is kind of like a Beatles type band, but a really unsuccessful, right? And they cross paths with the actual Beatles here and there
mm.
during the movie or something like that. Um,
Yeah.
that is. that could be interesting. I don't know. But my original idea was to go with the band and thinking of what is the most famous boy band of today. I think it would have to be 100% the South Korean pop band
Oh,
BTS. So I think you do a BTS version of A Hard Day's Night. You get a South Korean director like maybe Bong or Park Chan-wook or something. And those guys obviously are famous for, I mean, those Korean genre directors, they just mix all kinds of different types of movies and genres. So I think you make A Hard Day's Night, but you make it also like a zombie movie. So all the
oh.
fans are kind of zombies, and you have like a horror musical comedy starring BTS,
Mhm.
South Korea. I think you can make a pretty good buck with that.
Yeah. Be kind of like Anna and the Apocalypse, but with
Oh yeah,
yes,
right.
yeah, yeah, which is a movie I really loved. So there you go. Hey, we did it. We did a remix. I was thinking, what the heck am I? How do you remake this movie?
Yeah, it was a yeah. I agree with you. It was a tough one at the beginning.
So you get to pick the next choice, and
Hmm.
this next choice it's very exciting because it will be the start of our season 2 of
Yeah,
the Criterion projects. We have done 20 episodes in this first season, and so it'll be
mhm.
episode 21.
It's been
And
basically a whole year, right,
yeah,
of Criterion Project at this point.
yep,
So maybe next episode we should also take some time to talk about a little bit our favorites and least favorites, our discoveries and
yeah,
our disappointments of this
good
first
idea.
year of Criterion.
It's a good
Um,
idea.
but anyway, also, what better way to celebrate a whole year of Criterion than with the man, the myth, the legend, Jackie Chan, in his
Yes.
incredible 1985 movie Police Story. Rachel, this is a crazy movie. I can't wait to talk to you about it in a
Uh,
couple weeks. I love it. It's a lot of fun. It's a crazy, crazy action movie. Kind of like A Hard Day's Night. Don't go in for the plot. Come for this incredible
yeah.
stunts and Jackie Chan being awesome.
Well, I'm really excited because I really enjoy martial arts movies, and I just haven't seen this one in particular, but I do love martial arts movies, and I actually got to shake hands, meet Jackie Chan when I was
Oh,
in college. It was a book signing for his biography,
mm-hmm.
and it was actually a really good book. He has had a
Yeah.
crazy
He has a
life.
crazy life. Yeah, we can
Yeah,
talk about that next time too.
yeah. Like he grew up
Mm-hmm.
in this in this sort of like circus kind of
Yeah, boarding
experience, and
school type of thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was actually a really entertaining book, and so I got to meet him, and he's just a cool guy, cool man, and so I'll look forward to seeing Police Story,
Mm-hmm.
and so that one's gonna be fun to talk about. I'm excited
All right.
that
I'm
you
looking
picked it,
forward to it.
and
Great.
so let us know what you have been watching on the Criterion channel,
Mm-hmm.
and we would love to hear. And we really appreciate the positive feedback that we got from our episode with Eric. That was really fun, and
Yes.
we really enjoyed doing that, talking about the red shoes. So yeah, let us know what you think of that and of Hard Day's Night, and what's your favorite Beatles song? We'd love to hear.
Yeah, and what's your favorite Beatle? Ringo.
Yes. And you can follow us on at Criterion Pod on Twitter. So check that out. And Conrado, where can people follow you?
You can follow me at Coco Hits New York on Twitter. And I also have a blog, which is cocohitsny.wordpress.com. Now that we are in quarantine and with free time, I have been writing short mini essays on my blog. So go check them out. One of them is actually about Jackie Chan. So you can
Oh, cool.
get some of my thoughts in advance.
Good. Great. And you can follow me at Rachel's Reviews, all of our social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. Make sure you check that out. I got to review on my blog the mini documentary series McMillions, which I loved, and it's so entertaining.
Yeah.
And also reviewed the indie film psychological thriller horror, whatever you want to call it, Swallow, which is a very weird movie. But so I have those reviews up on my blog, so check it out.
Great.
Yeah.
We should also thank Michael Lorette for the music that opens our show.
Yes, thank you so much. And yeah, so let us know what you think, and we'll be excited for the next time we get together. So thank you so much for 20 episodes. It's so exciting.
Yeah, thank you. I'll see you guys next
Bye,
time.
everyone.